Hello everyone, and thanks for hanging out with me. Today we're gonna look at the charging curve of the Volkswagen ID.7 Pro of my car, Hank. And if you didn't know, he's called Hank because of the show Breaking Bad. Walter was called Walter because of Breaking Bad. Walter White, my ID3. And now Hank is his big brother. It was his brother-in-law. That's why it's called Hank, and I think it fits. My wife doesn't think so, but I do, and it's too late. He's called Hank. Yes, I charged the Volkswagen ID.7 or Hank at Ionity from 10 to 95%. I drove 130 kilometers an hour range test before that, but after the test, the car showed me battery is cold, and with the button I preheated the battery, and this is an amazing feature. Not a lot of EVs have that, and what's even more amazing in the ID.7 is that you can see the charging power you can get right now with the temperature that you have, the charging power you could get if the battery would be at optimal temperature, and it tells you how long it will take to get the battery up to the temperature. And the important part is it depends what you're doing. So it has to be in drive to do the heating. We tested that on a live stream. I started the heating when the car was parked and nothing was done, and then I put it into drive, so in B or D, whatever, and then maybe in reverse, and then it started to preheat with 5 to 5.5 kilowatt or so. But of course, if you're driving, for example, and you use a lot of power, which heats up the battery as well, then this time goes down. It doesn't go down amazingly fast, but you can see the temperature in the screen going up faster, and then the time at some point it just says nothing. And then when you stop preheating and start preheat, you can't start the preheating again, it will say optimal temperature reached. And I did this in this case. By the way, this feature also works when you navigate to a charger. So when the battery says I need 20 minutes to preheat to get optimal temperature, 20 minutes before you reach the charger, it will start preheating. Of course, if you change your speed, then that would be problematic. But I don't know exactly how it works. I haven't done that yet. I saw the charging curve. I was there when the charging was happening. I filmed it, and it is the best charging Volkswagen EV ever. Not through the whole curve, but through most of it, and they exceeded my expectations. I didn't think the car would charge any different than an ID.4 or an ID.4 GTX. With the new software, they have different charging curves because of not because of the software, it's different chemistry in the battery. But the software then unlocked this new charging curves that ID.4 and ID.4 GTX have, Pro and GTX. And we're gonna look at the charging curve, then we're gonna analyze it a bit, and then we're gonna look at the comparison to other Volkswagen and then to other cars who have similar battery or charge in a similar way. If you want to follow me on Instagram, Battery Life 1, I always post nice videos of cars and stuff that I do. I hope to see you there. And if you want to support the channel, there's a Patreon link in the description below, and there's also channel membership here on YouTube. Thank you very much. So, we start the charging session 340 volt, but it goes up to 360. I started at 10%. It started right away with 183 kilowatt or so, and we already see it maxes out Ionity and the CCS standard with 500 amps. The voltage goes still up. And then we get the peak of 191 kilowatt at 26%, and this stays even till 31%. What was it? 192 even for a short second. Here it goes down at 32%. But voltage goes up to 384 volt right now. The peak, I think, is 405 volt or something. And amps are now going down, but it's going down slowly. So at 45%, still 162 kilowatt. What do we have at 50%? where are we? 149 kilowatt. And we go under 100 kilowatt at around 64%. So voltage slowly going up, amps going down. After 14 minutes, we have charged, let's see, with 15 minutes, we have charged 41 kilowatt hours at 60%, still 120 kilowatt, but it went down really fast from 120 to 110. And very soon we have the 100 kilowatt, which was the peak now, peak of my ID.3 when I got it. Where I was happy to get 100 kilowatt, and this is now something you get at 64%. Under 90 kilowatt we are at 69%. After 20 minutes we are at the 70%, and by the way, it takes 26 minutes from 10 to 80%, and I started at 10%. So if I would have started at 9% and then I calculate from 10 to 80, I think it would be 25 minutes or something. That's a very good number, and as you can see, it's still charging now at 75 kilowatt at 78%, and even at 90% it will still start charge at 50%, and then 94 or so it goes down to 40 kilowatt, not percent. What am I talking about? And not even 400 volts. My ID.3 had 450 volt. It's a different battery pack. I really thought this would have the same charging curve as the ID.4.5 GTX, which goes to around 180 and goes down very, very fast. But this is so much better at 87%, almost 60 kilowatt. Still, we had exactly 400 volt, and after 33 minutes we have charged 66 kilowatt hours, and now at 90% still 55 kilowatt. Awesome. 35 minutes charge. The voltage is still only at 402, and I think full it was 405, something like this. And it's still over 50 kilowatt at 94%, but then now it goes down a bit under 95%. I didn't stop. I was showing something in infotainment system, and by mistake I put the charge limit to 50% and it stopped charging. So that was my mistake. There's a catch, and it is the same catch as all Volkswagen ID cars have. You have to plug in under 15% to get an amazing charging curve. If you plug in at 25%, you don't get the same charging curve, the same charging power as if you plug in at 15% and then charge to those 25. It's not the same number. All Volkswagen IDs that I drove and tested and charged need to be plugged in for a good charging curve. Of course, if you have time, nobody cares. But if this is important to you, they have to be plugged in under 15%. Then you get an amazing charging curve, the peak and the optimum that this battery can do. And here we have a charging curve as a graph. We have on the left, so up, the charging power in kilowatt, and on the right we have the state of charge in percent. So this shows what charging power you get at a certain state of charge when you plug in, like I just said, like I did here at 10%. And as you can see, it's a very smooth curve. There is no weird things going on up and down and stuff. Starts very fast at the 184 kilowatt, goes to the peak of 191, 192, then slowly goes down. We have a bit of more of a dip at around 60%. It goes down a bit more, but then very steadily back out. And so there is no weird things going on, and I like that. But now let's compare it to other Volkswagen models. And in here I have my ID.7, the ID.5 GTX, which represents other all-wheel drive models like the ID.4 GTX, the Skoda Enyaq iV RS. Then I have the normal Pro version of the ID.4, ID.5 because they have a different charging curve. The ID Bus, which had a different one. And my old ID.3 Pro, so Walter. And this is the updated curve. This is not the 100 kilowatt with 3.0, no, with 2.4 even. It got 130 kilowatt very fast and then down again, which resulted in a 10 to 80% 2 minutes faster. But I see the colors. Blue is the ID.7, green should be the ID Bus, red should be the GTX, yellow is the ID.4 Pro, and I don't know what color that is, is Walter. And as you can see, Walter is under all cars. The ID.7 Pro starts very slow, only goes up to around 140 kilowatt, but stays above 100 kilowatt to 75%. Even the ID.7 doesn't do that. ID.7, like we talked before, 64%, but the ID.5 GTX goes up to 177 kilowatt, but goes under the 100 kilowatt already at 42%. This is where the bus comes in. It has a higher peak to 186 kilowatt, and I think I have seen that on the ID.3 Pro S, so with the bigger battery and the new software 3.5 as well. I had a facelift, and this one goes under, the bus goes under 100 kilowatt at around 52 kilowatt. So when you talk about the GT, except for the Pro version, the ID.7 Pro, the ID.7 stays above 100 kilowatt above all of them. And even when I see this curve till 60, what is that, 58%, it is above all the other cars. Only from 58 to around 80%, the ID.7 Pro is better, which is way slower here in the beginning to the 58%. And then you can see the bus is a bit better here, to 80 to 90%. Amazing. It goes to 81 kilowatt till 90 kilowatt till 81%, which is really cool. But I can see that till, if you don't take the Pro, it's still 70% almost where the ID.7 is better charging. So what I said before is true. It is the best Volkswagen ID charging car. I said it. But now let's compare it to other cars. And I looked around what cars I have tested. Of course there are other cars that charge amazing, but I haven't tested them. And I mean Taycan and Audi e-tron GT. I've never tested one. I've never charged one, so I don't know. But what I have, in similar to what the ID.7 Pro, is the Kia EV6 with the 800 volt system. That's the only car I ever tested with 800 volt system. And I have the BMW i4 M50, which also has a very high peak of 205 kilowatt. And as you will look at the curve, the ID.7 swims in the middle of those two. The Kia EV6 as the Ioniq 5, Ioniq 6, Kia EV9 with their 800 volt system have amazing charging power. It goes up to 235 kilowatts, so really awesome. We have a few steps, and we can have a dip like this where charging goes down to 1 kilowatt or 10 kilowatt or so. Battery is being intensely cooled, and then it goes back up. This happens. I had it in the Ioniq 6 and I had it in the Ioniq 5. In this Kia EV6 we had it here, and this happens on different depending on the temperature, on different state of charges. Important is though, this charging curve of the EV6 here is amazing, and what's even more amazing, this car doesn't care when you plug it in. So if you plug in the Kia EV6 at 40%, you might not get 230 kilowatt, but you will still get 200 kilowatt. And ID.7, my ID.7 won't ever do that. When I plug at 40%, I might get 100 or so. It doesn't follow the curve. The EV6 doesn't follow it perfectly, but it's still amazing. I remember I plugged in at 50 something percent and got 200 kilowatt, which is awesome. The BMW i4 here has a nice peak of the 205. I don't have too much experience with it. I only had the car for a week, I think. That's all I did, one charging session where I recorded this. I don't have too much experience, but in this curve I can see that it's above the ID.7 Pro till 26%, and then it's underneath it all the time, so it gets really high. It's also 400 volt system, so it's more similar when it comes to technology to the ID.7, but the Koreans know how to charge. So I'm very happy with the charging of my ID.7. It's way better than Walter, my old ID.3. It was one of the worst chargers. The ID.3 Pure is still under that, but not a lot. And I'm happy that I have a car now that is also more efficient. Even in my range test, you've seen my 130 kilometers hour range test, where I was disappointed a bit that I only got 304 kilometers at 130 in these conditions. But as I showed a little picture, I tested Walter at similar conditions, maybe 2 degrees colder, -1 to -3. And Id.7 was 1 to -1, something like this. But it was damp when I drove and foggy when I drove the Id.7. And I got 200 kilometers with Walter. So I got 100 kilometers more, so 50% more, but I don't have 50% more battery. It just goes from 58 to 77. So is that 50%? Could be. I did the calculation. It's 33% more battery, but I had 50% more range. And in the summer I expect way more range because both don't have a heat pump. But that's enough for that. I'm happy with the charging. I'm excited to do long distance trips. It will be amazing to have Walter 3 years ago was good, and this is now the technology of today, and I'm happy with this. I can live with this 28 minutes, 10 to 80%, and with the 80% I have good range that I can live with. But that's it for me. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great day and take care. Bye.